Welcome to our back to school session with Gregor Suttie and me, Matt Boyd. Today we'll be discussing Azure Advisor and the hidden gems that can be found within the supplied Azure workbooks. Gregor, I've got a bit of experience with log analytics workspaces in KQL or Custo query language. But when it comes to the workbooks themselves, I have less experience creating or using what Microsoft has to offer. Most of the time, I'm just querying raw AKS or firewall logs for specific error messages. I know you've spent a bit of time with Azure Advisor and the workbooks that Microsoft supply there. Are you able to kind of show me around and what there is to offer there?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Yep. So I've got a couple of tabs open. So to start off with, I, as you said, have been doing a lot of work with Azure Advisor. I think it's a great service. But this particular video, I'm going to talk about 3 of the workbooks that come along with it. So if you go into Advisor and you just search for Advisor on the top, you can click on the icon and then you go into Workbooks on the left-hand side menu. So the 3 that I'm going to talk about today are these 3 here. So we have the reliability workbook, we have the service retirement workbook, and the cost optimization workbook. Now these are in preview, and I asked at the MVP Summit, why are these in preview? What does that mean? It means that not all services in Azure are covered by these workbooks. So the teams at Microsoft are working tirelessly to try and bring all the services into these workbooks. So for example, you might not see a particular service come in the service retirement. Things like automation accounts might not appear, for example. That's just a guess, but you might see that. Yeah. So
they're looking to build over time to make these better. Do you have a prospective date for when they'll become generally available, or
no? I did ask the question, and I think it's just work in progress. So you'll see more and more services added to these, but it might never be finished because they're always adding things. So yeah, I don't know when they'll be like out of preview and into GA, but I make use of them all the time.
Because a little bit like Gmail and the fact that it was in beta for many years.
Yes. Unlike Google, hopefully it won't just disappear overnight. So the one thing to note is you can do it on multiple subscriptions, but I'm just going to try and do it on MVP subscriptions. So there's not a lot of resources in here, but I'll talk you through what they're for and things like that. So back to workbooks. Okay. Let's start off with the reliability preview, which, to be fair, I've not really spent a lot of time on.
So it'd be good to dive in. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to work out whether it's to do with service health, SLAs, or just highlighting kind of non-available, non-highly available services.
Now, one thing to mention, but these workbooks are all editable. You can basically reuse them. You can change them, edit them. You can reuse the underlying KQL queries. You can make use of all that good stuff. So that's one thing that's worth mentioning about. Right, reliability workbook. So it says the objective of this workbook is to provide an overview of the configured state of deployment options that affect the resilience and availability SLA for common Azure resource types. The other thing to note is you can filter it by subscription, resource group, environment, tags, blah, blah, blah. All right. So under compute, you've got 2 options, virtual machines and virtual machine scale sets. So I have probably 1 or maybe 2. I've got 2 VMs deployed. So under reliability, under services, compute, virtual machines, it's basically going to tell you what this is going to try and do. So it says here basically, this is the SLA. It tells you all about the operating system and the state of the VM. So I deliberately deallocated these VMs. So it's a very good way of saying or seeing which VMs are deallocated. It will give you details like where is it, what resource group is it in, it even tells you what availability zone it's in. I didn't actually realise that until now. It doesn't know the OS disk because it's unknown. I need to start with VM, and it tells you things like there's no backup configured. So that's quite handy. I don't have any classic virtual machines, unfortunately, but if I did, it would tell me that I did there. So you can use this workbook to find virtual machine recommendations to do with resiliency and reliability, basically.
So So if we've had a look at compute and kind of seeing that it's highlighting kind of availability and backup kind of configuration,
Yeah.
I'm just interested from a storage point of view. Does it highlight kind of replication state? So
Yes.
kind of whether you've got local
Yeah.
like
Great
replication or
question.
global
Let's look at storage next. So storage accounts, it basically tells you things like, do you have, well, is replication configured? It tells you the replication type. So there's your LRS.
Yeah.
It also would tell you if you have any classic storage accounts. So that's like V1 storage accounts.
So it looks like they're trying to highlight classic resources
Yeah,
across the board, like depending,
basically, yeah.
no matter what the case.
Now,
Presumably, if you had a globally replication, like global replication, kind of enabled on a storage account, then it would be flagging up here that you are replicating to another Azure
yeah,
region.
exactly, yep. It also tells you that classic storage is in the path of retirement, so you can click on retirement, but that's in the second workbook that we'll come to. So we'll cover that next. So I don't think I've got too many other things in here. I maybe have web apps. Yeah, so let's have a look at the app service plan here. So I've got an old app service plan. It's basic SKU. Now, the things that it highlights that isn't good gives you a wee triangle. So basic SKU is kind of like old, and they're trying to get you off of basic SKUs basically. And
Yeah,
it's highlighting here that I don't have availability zones configured, and I've only got one instance.
that's a single
So
instance running, so you've got that
yeah,
single point of failure.
yeah, I'm running Festive Tech Calendar website from 2 years ago, but it's the same code from last year, all in a single instance, which is obviously not a great idea for reliability. If that website goes down, the whole site goes down. Rather than I could potentially have two versions of it or two copies of it. Two
Yeah,
app instances would be better. So that's kind of highlighting that. Again, very useful. Here I've got a premium V3, so it's telling me the SKU again. It's telling me what kind, tell me if it's ready or not, where it is, the resource group, and again, availability zones are not configured in number of instances. So I should probably go and look at that before we go live for the Festive Tech Calendar in 2024. Make it two
yeah,
instances. So that's really helpful, I think. It's just a very easy way to see what sort of reliability you have. Obviously, if you've got a larger Azure estate like our customers do, then we can go and look at all that kind of stuff. But this is just my kind of playground subscription. So
So before we just move on, with the networking tab, what kind of information is shown there? I'm just thinking whether do you have
yeah,
any resources there?
I think I've got public IP deployed, so it's probably going to tell me that's oh, there we go. We've got 6. So it's telling me here again I don't have availability zones configured for some of these public IPs. Tells you the version, the IP allocation. I think I've put environment tags in here, but I don't have tags for that one. So that's quite
Yeah.
useful as well. Obviously, again, more Azure resources you've deployed, the better this would be.
Yeah, and you've got different tabs for like the Azure firewall and the front doors and an app
Yep.
gateway and load balancers.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything else. I don't think I've got a front. I might have. No, I don't have a front door deployed. Unfortunately, I might have databases deployed. Let's take a quick look at that. Yeah, I've got a database. Let's see what it says for that. Okay, so it's a general purpose database. Excuse me. It's telling me what version of the database it is. It's telling me that it's using vCore. It's serverless. It's online. Availability zones are not configured. Not good. Backup storage redundancy. Local. Might not be the best thing to do for production databases, for example. So high level, that's kind of what the reliability workbook is for.
So just very briefly then, so it's focused more on ensuring kind of high availability and kind of the availability zones and
Yep.
having kind of that disaster recovery or
Failover type scenarios where just make sure that you've got
yeah,
availability and make sure you're not doing local backups. You should be using like geo-redundant backups, that kind of stuff.
yeah, definitely. So you've got a service alert at the end. Is that to do with service health or is that something else?
Yes, it's basically telling you what have you got on your subscriptions. So I have no alerts, I have no issues, I have no advisories. In other words, I haven't set up alerts for these subscriptions. So that's kind of giving you an overall summary, which is probably, again, I'm only on kind of test subscription, so that doesn't matter. But if this was production, you would want to make sure the alerts were enabled and firing, for example.
You were getting those advisories for any changes that were potentially required for your environment.
You can also export all this to Excel. I just noticed that wee link there on the right-hand side, so that's quite good. The last thing probably to mention is this. I don't think I've ever looked at this tab actually. Oh yeah, I have. Cross-region replication. So this kind of basically says, do you have recovery vault services vault configured? I've got one, but I don't have cross-region restore on, so that's kind of highlighting that. I've got a storage account that is using GZRS replication. It's not configured though, and I don't have backup policies on either of my VMs.
Yeah, so it's highlighting all the resources that could have improved high availability by enabling either the backup or the replication into another region.
Yep. So it's exactly that. I've got everything in UK South, and I'm not replicating anything anywhere. So that's not really what you want if you've got a production environment for customers. So that's kind of that. So that's the quick run through of the reliability workbook.
I was going to say, so if we're wrapping up on the reliability workbook now, then I think did you say the next one was kind of service retirement?
Yes.
And presumably is that about potential resources that are being retired?
Yes, funnily enough. So at Intercept where I work, I get lots of emails saying this service is retiring, and I always wondered where do they come from, and how do you go and find out quickly and easily what is being retired and when? And then I stumbled across this by accident one day because I actually meant to click on that workbook and clicked on this one. So I'm actually going to go into the second tab. And I'm going to go into this service retirement here. So here you can see on the left, you've got the list of the services. You've got the retiring feature. You've got the retirement date and also a number of how many resources you've got affected. Right. So for example, here, Application Insights Classic was retiring on the 29th of February, 2024. So in this particular subscription, there's still 323 resources needing fixed.
Right.
Now, if I click on that below, you'll see the list of customer subscriptions and all of the stuff. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to show that, but I just wanted to show this part of the screen so that you can go in and I've actually got this running on all subscriptions, all resource groups, all locations. Again, I'm on impact resources. I can click that and down below it will show me all of the application insights with the details of the subscription and the tenant ID and things like that for all of the application insights that are needing migrated away from Classic because it's retired.
Yeah. Okay. And so this is a list of all the retired services, regardless of whether you have them or not, because I can see in the resources column any service that you don't have any kind of affected services. It says none. So kind of it's covering all the bases, regardless of how full or kind of how busy the subscription is that you're looking at.
An example today was I got an email from Microsoft saying you need to have, I can't remember the exact service, but some things, I think it was like Log Analytics. You need to upgrade to Log Analytics Agent instead of the old agent, and it needs to be done by the end of this month. Now, I got an email, and all it did was say subscription, and the IDs. Now, I don't know which customer they belong to. I don't know which tenant they belong to. So it's quite difficult when you work for a CSP with hundreds of customers, and you get an email that says the subscription ID, you've no idea where to start, i.e. which tenant. So you can search for it and eventually find it, but it's easier just to come in here and then look at the particular service. So if you look at things like app service, let's take that. Let's maybe not do that one. Let's do, I don't know, what's the best example? Grafana, for example. There's 5 Grafana services needing done by the 30th of September. So if I click on that, it'll show me down below which subscriptions they're in, and it gives you a bit more information. And you can click the link and it'll take you to those subscriptions as well. So this.
Yeah. So how far in the future does it go? I mean, is it listing every single service that potentially could be required? As in,
yeah, it goes down to like 2027.
Right. Okay.
So there's quite a few. Yeah, it's pretty good. And this continually gets updated. So yeah, there's even things like I don't even know what they are, like Azure Personalizer. Never heard of that in my life. Azure Metrics Advisor. The entire service is retiring. So we need to know this stuff up front, and we need to like inform our customers that these services are retiring, and then we need to do something about it. But this is the one place to come and find all of the information about what is retiring and when.
Okay.
Now, an example of this would be a customer is potentially still using, well, they are still using the classic resources. That's probably stopped logging now.
Right.
So there could be production web apps, for example, that are sitting trying to write to an old version of App Insights that's not really going to work anymore. So it's quite important to fix these things before they actually retire. So that's the workbook for service retirement. I think it's really good. I really like it. I don't like getting emails where it gives you a little bit of information, but this seems to give you a lot more information.
Yeah, and it's quite concise in that you're not having to root through lots of different tabs to then have child tabs, and you're not 3 layers deep in a workbook. It's a quite small, kind of concise.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're done with service retirement, I think the third.
Onto my
cost
favorite
optimization.
It is. So if anyone is ever looking to save money, most people go to Azure Advisor over here and then click on cost recommendations, and it'll give you a great list of cost recommendations. So if I'm doing a cost scan for a customer, this is my first stop. I'll go into Advisor and I'll go to the cost page and I'll look through all the costs. However, let me do it actually here. Let's do it here. I think this workbook's even better than that other part of the cost recommendations, and I'll tell you why. It gives you lots more detail. There's things in here that aren't in the other part, and I'll go into some of them in a minute. So first of all, you have like an overview page, which gives you a little bit of information about what it is and what it's trying to do. You can submit feedback, you can submit issues, you can do feature requests, that kind of stuff. You can have a look at resources overview. It'll give you an idea where things are. It'll give you security recommendations. So you can see there's lots of security recommendations that we should look at. High, medium, and lows. And there's reliability recommendations as well. So there's some highs and mediums. So it's fair to say that's quite handy straight off the bat. But the part that I like the best is actually these 2 tabs at the top. So if I go back to the welcome page and click on rate optimization, let's see what that is. So this is all about committed base savings, really. So it's things like Azure Hybrid Benefit. Now, if you don't know what Azure Hybrid Benefit is, if you have Windows virtual machines, for example, you can buy a Hybrid Benefit license for a year, which is roughly about $260. Now, why would you do that? Well, if you put an Azure Hybrid Benefit license on a VM, it actually saves you money over that year. It will save you more than the cost of the license. So let's say your VM costs, I don't know, €5,000 for 12 months. You can buy an Azure Hybrid Benefit license for the VM, apply it to the VM, and it reduces it by a certain percentage, which saves more than the actual cost of the license. Right. So here it will tell you, it gives you a summary of, do you have Azure Hybrid Benefit enabled? And I do. I seem to have 2 enabled, so that's good. With or without. So I think that's, 2 that have got it. And then you can go down here and it will tell you all about the number of cores to enable Windows Hybrid Benefit and give you a bit more. Again, I don't really have too many. I don't think I've got any Windows VMs that have Windows licenses on it. But yeah, pretty useful. Any questions on that part?
So I can see that you've got Windows VMs there, but then you've also got Linux VMs and scale sets. So what's the hybrid benefit on a Linux VM? You know, if you're not
well,
buying a Windows license for a Linux VM, are you? So
no. So you can buy Azure Hybrid Benefit for certain types of Linux machines, but it's very, I think it's like Red Hat Linux only. So you would need to do a bit of reading on that. But I didn't think you could do Azure Hybrid Benefit on Linux VMs, but it turns out you can. And I only found that out by accident when I was working with Justin, one of our colleagues. Yeah, you can actually put Azure Hybrid Benefit on Linux VMs, which I did not know. But yeah, you actually, it's only a certain kind. I think it's Red Hat are the only ones that would do it. But again, that will save money on the cost of the VM over time. I don't have any VM scale sets, unfortunately.
But is the scale set just applying the same Windows licensing, but to a scale set rather than a single VM?
An individual VM, correct? Yeah.
And the other thing, and then you've got SQL there as well, right?
Yeah, I'm going to click on that. You can do, if you've got SQL virtual machines, you could definitely put Azure Hybrid Benefit on that as well, but I don't actually have any. Actually, if you're a customer, let's say, and you've got 50 VMs that are, let's just say they're 50 Windows VMs, you should really look at putting Azure Hybrid Benefit on it. Even if it's just, it'll give you go into the Azure pricing calculator, go to the types of VMs and click on Azure Hybrid Benefit, and you'll see it drop quite dramatically in cost for 1 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good way to save money.
So apart from Hybrid Benefit, was there anything else in this section at the top?
No, I don't think so. No, there's commitment discounts, but it's kind of, I think that's something.
So is that reserved instances or something?
Yeah,
different?
that's like reserved instances. Yeah, so that's like reservations. So for people who don't know what reservations are, just quickly, if you buy let's say you have a Windows virtual machine, you pay a certain amount for it. If you know that you need that for 1 year or 3 years, you can buy what's called a reservation and reserve it, and you get quite a big discount on the cost of the virtual machine, and it's kind of reserved for you, so it's not given away or repurposed for anyone else. And you can save quite a bit of money doing that.
It's for machines that are probably on 24/7, right? As in,
yes.
It's just that's you're paying for it regardless of whether the machine's on or off.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to put a reservation on a VM that you would stop like at night and then bring it back up in the morning. That doesn't really make sense. You want to keep it on 24/7. So it's production VMs basically, not just production VMs, but kind of mainly for that really, because they're on all the time. And the longer the commitment, the more you save. So I think it's like potentially 40-50%. I can't remember exactly, but something like, let's just say it's 40% for 1 year and 52% for 3 years. So you get a little bit more for doing that. And you can put reservations on a number of things, not just VMs, but that's a different thing for another day, really. Right, so let's go and look at the really cool tab, which is the usage optimization, right? So this is going to look at what I'm using currently and give me cost recommendations on what I have. So first of all, let's start off with compute. So you've got compute, storage, networking, databases, sustainability, and then it lists your top 10 services. So compute, we've got virtual machines. I have no VMs in a stop state, which is good, but I do have deallocated VMs. So it highlights the fact that I am paying a certain amount of money for 2 VMs that I'm not actually using.
Sorry, just to go back. So a stopped VM, what's the difference between stopped and deallocated?
So stopped is you actually, I don't think you can even stop it in the portal anymore. You just deallocate it in the portal. You can stop it using PowerShell. So stopped is literally just stopped, and there we go. So
the allocated resources are still allocated to that machine, whereas deallocated is that they're released back into the pool.
They're released back into the pool for someone else
to be used. So if you've got a stopped VM, it's effectively costing you the same as if the machine was still running. Whereas deallocated, I'm guessing it releases the releases the resources, so you're not paying for the compute and the memory usage, but you're still paying for the storage for the disks.
Exactly. So yeah, a lot of people don't know that, or what I tend to do is when I'm doing this with customers, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize we had still these VMs lying around," because they're just busy during their week, and this is always a good place to come and find that kind of things.
Yeah.
Nice. And then there's a little bit down the bottom. It just tells you what the processor types are and what VM sizes you've got and which resource group they're in. So that's compute. Then you've got virtual machine scale sets. I don't have any of them, but it also gives you, like, it would tell you, like, you can save money with Azure Spot VMs. And you can also get advisor recommendations. Again,
so
I don't have too many VMs.
I was going to say, presumably that's just the cost recommendations that you mentioned in the tab on the left hand side. Just within the report.
Exactly. Correct. Right. Yep. And if you like the look of this kind of report, you can edit this. You can clone it and then add things to it if you want. Do you know what I mean? You can change these workbooks so that they're not like set in stone. You can go in and edit it and then add things. So you could basically create your own report. And then give it to customers, for example. You can save the JSON and then send it out to someone if you really wanted to do that. So that's compute. Let's take a look at storage. So storage will tell you, are you using any V1 types of storage? So the reason is it's basically, it tells you here, general purpose V2 accounts are recommended for most scenarios, and then it will give you a breakdown on, you get better gigabyte capacity prices for storage when it's V2. So they're trying to get you off V1 and onto V2 accounts. Which makes sense. You've also got, the next one's managed disks. Now, the number of customers I've spoken to who have got managed disks that they didn't even realize they had, and it's normally unattached managed disks. So back in the day when you created a virtual machine, there wasn't a wee tick box to say remove the disks and remove the public IP and all that good stuff, and people would delete a virtual machine and the unattached managed disk would just be left lying. And I've seen customers that have hundreds of these, and they're like P1 or P10 disks, and they're quite expensive, or P50 disks, and they're really expensive, and they're just sitting there doing nothing. So here you go, premium disks attached to powered off VMs. So this has got premium disk attached to a VM that's deallocated. So I'm paying for that disk, even though I'm not doing anything with it. Now, I deallocated that just for the purposes of this session. So I'll go in and I'll actually delete these VMs after this, but I'm paying for the disk and the VM storage. So that's just telling you that. I've also seen customers with hundreds of old managed disk snapshots that are lying around that are older than 30 days, and they didn't even know they were there. Again, sometimes you see customers with large lists of that. Managed disk snapshots using premium storage. That's quite handy to have a list of, just in case you're doing that. And the last one's often managed disk snapshots. So sometimes we see customers with that, and it's a list of the often managed disk snapshots.
So an orphan snapshot is what a snapshot for a disk that no longer exists, but the snapshot does.
Yes. Yep. Right. And you're paying for that as well. So yeah, quite good. What I like about this workbook is that's quite hard to find. You would need to write your own KQL query to go and do that. And this workbook does it all the hard work for you. So a big thank you to whoever wrote these workbooks. They're really, really awesome. So we're still under storage. Let's go to backup next. So it tells you are there any idle backups. So that's basically, are there any storage accounts that haven't been backed up in the last 90 days?
Yeah.
So that's quite good to know. And there's also backup storage redundancy settings. So here it's telling you when you configure backup for resources, geo-redundant storage replication is applied to these backups. So it's basically telling you that you've got recovery vault storage replication going on here. So it'll tell you which type of redundancy you've got and where it is and the SKU. So it's just useful to know these kind of things to see what's going on in your environment.
Very nice.
Right, and then we've got advisor recommendations based off of that. We're following all the ones for storage, which is good. Networking, you'd be surprised the number of times, I don't have too much in the way of deployed networking, but public IP addresses that are unattached. This is always, I don't think I've ever seen a customer without at least one of these. So again, public IP has been created, the resource has been removed or the VM's been removed, and they've not ticked remove the public IP as well, and it's sitting there costing you money, doing absolutely nothing. Normally there's a big list when you do this with customers, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't even know this was existed." Yeah, because you would just go in and see public IPs, and you might not see that it's unattached.
Yeah.
It's not allocated
So,
to
so
anything. So
for the other kind of more meatier kind of networking resources, so like the Azure Firewall or the Application Gateway, what is it flagging for those?
the application Azure Firewall, it'll tell you about. It'll just tell you if you've got premium, and then it'll give you details on it.
Right.
It's telling you to avoid multiple firewalls in the same region. Not really seen too many people do that before, but yeah, at some point you can create 2 Azure firewalls in the same region. So it's just trying to warn you about that, and it gives you a little bit of information about what it's doing here, and a link to the Azure well architected framework. So some guidelines on what you should and shouldn't really be doing. Yeah. The application gateway is sort of similar. It'll be like, are there any empty backend pools, that kind of thing.
Okay, so an application gateway that's basically running with nothing behind it, and
nothing
just
behind
sat
it.
there costing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got load balancer.
Again,
So again,
which sat there.
Yeah. Virtual network gateway is. Oh, here we go. So is it connected? No. So actually, this is actually really handy because I deployed this morning and I forgot about it. So I need to go in and remove that.
Right.
So it's a good example of like, I would probably have forgotten about that. But now I look at this and I'm saving money by looking at my own workbooks and my own subscriptions. So let's get rid of that. Haven't really done anything with that gateway. It's just checking for an idle NAT gateway. Express route, again, there's nothing idle. And private DNS and private endpoint, there's no idle private DNS.
Right.
Let's take a look at databases. So databases are, do you have any Cosmos DB, and is it basically doing a good, are you using the RUs properly? I'll give you a wee bit of a recommendation on that. SQL Server DB. Sorry, on you go.
Sorry, can you go back to Cosmos? So RUs is their kind of request unit, is it?
Yes. When you do a query, it works out like the CPU and how much RAM and all that it needs, or resources to give you that query back. You need like RUs, so it's request units. So every single query that you do has a number of request units, and you basically, when you provision Cosmos DB, you can give it like a throughput RUs, and if it goes over that, then it will start to struggle, and you need to keep an eye on that, because if you put the RUs too high, then you'll be paying a lot of money for stuff you're not
just
really
capacity, like capacity you're not using. So you want to kind of make sure that they're about right, but you're not throttling too much. So if your RUs are too low, I'm guessing it then just you start getting kind of like throttling messages, or
I can't remember the error message code, but it's like 429 or whatever it is, and you'll get loads of errors starting to come back to the front end, or depending on how you handle it. Yeah, exactly. SQL DB. So it's just, are there any databases idle that you've not used for 30 days? Which is quite handy, because I'm sure loads of customers have got databases that they've forgotten about and they're paying for, but nobody's actually using it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like dev databases where people are like, I don't know if that's used anymore. Well, it will tell you in here if it's been used in the last 30 days. And again, if you want to see the query for that, you can edit that and grab the KQL. Maybe you want to change it to 10 days or whatever. You can absolutely grab the KQL for all of this. Elastic Pool. Does your Elastic Pool contain at least one database, just in case you create an Elastic Pool and forget to add it? I've done that before. Yeah, I've created Elastic 4 databases, and then I created Elastic Pool and forgot to add them in, and then the customer was paying for 4 databases, but and the pool, and that's obviously not what you want to be doing. And then the last part is sustainability, which I don't really. It's all about carbon savings. I've never really seen anything in that, to be honest with you.
Okay. So you got one more tab there, which is top 10 services. Is that just kind of top 10 your savings, or?
Pretty much, yes.
Or what?
Yeah. So I don't really know, because I thought it'd be like the top 10 services that I'm using, but then I see this AKS tab, which I'm not using, so I'm not really sure about that. Synapse I'm not using. monitoring, I'm definitely using log analytics. Not sure why that's under top 10 services. Not entirely sure why it says top 10 services there, to be honest with you, but it's red, so maybe I'm on the wrong tier here. I don't know. That possibly something to look at. Yeah, when it goes red, it always seems to suggest there's something not right there. But under Azure App Service, it shows you the plans, the IDs, and if it's running, and kind of the SKUs and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the cost management workbook. I've always done cost scans for customers, and not once have I found anything that, or found nothing that they can save money on. So I pretty much guarantee that anyone who has a set, even a small Azure environment, there's always something in here you can use to save money.
Okay, yeah. and this workbook, like you said, is an extension of the recommendations, but also a different way of looking at your resources to highlight where there are potential savings, rather than just the sort of the cost blade where it just gives you the overview of your monthly spend, and then you have to go diving for this information. It's kind of highlighting the services and the sorts of configurations that might be causing you to pay more than you definitely need.
Yeah, I think if I'm doing a cost scan, I would kind of do a mixture of looking at cost management. I don't normally go into cost management, really, to be honest with you. I usually just use the cost recommendations and then this, because that usually covers everything. I go into the cost management blade when a customer suddenly has a spike in their bill, when they ask me, like, why is their budget alerts going off? That's when I would use that. So I would use the cost recommendations here as a first port of call, just to see, like, is there any recommendations, first of all? Things like, do you need to resize virtual machines? Do you need to do Azure reservations? Then I would go into the workbooks and drill into the cost optimization preview workbook. And then this is usually my first port of call, usage optimization, and go through this with proper customers rather than my empty subscription that doesn't have too much in it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think these workbooks are hidden gems. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely agree with you. I've just done a quick Google on what the top 10 services is. It's just other popular services within Azure.
Okay. So, that makes sense. Yeah,
which is why it's web apps and AKS and Synapse, you know, sort of, and monitoring, kind of probably the big four that could be quite costly like over time if not kind of properly managed and maintained. So yeah. Anything else to show me?
You can edit these. You do need to kind of have a little bit of idea what you're doing. You can go in and edit this, for example. Let's say you can go in and edit the workbook, right? And then you need to go in and edit all the sections. Like if you wanted to edit this text, for example, or remove it, you can click on the edit button down here, and it'll let you go in and kind of change the text and things like that. Your best bet to do this, if you are doing this, then you can what does you do? I think you do edit, and then you can do advanced mode or something like that, and you can see the actual underlying source code here. So this shows you the code that builds all this. You can also save it as an ARM template, and yeah, not really. This is probably not an easy workbook to change, but it gives you an idea on. I've actually used this for, like, how do you do things like graphs and stuff like that. So if I want to create a workbook with, I don't know, there's charts on some of these. Let me see if I can find one. Probably not going to find one now, but some of these, I think the sustainability one has got like a graph on it, and if you want to learn how to do that, you can go in and view the KQL and how they go about doing it.
Okay.
Again, pretty good. I think they're very useful.
Cool. Okay. So if there's nothing else to show me, then I think this is probably a good place to kind of wrap up.
Yeah. So, just before we go, though, right? Just before we go, let me stop sharing. Actually, let me do stop screen, and then. So this was part of the Azure Back to School scenario. So thank you for joining, Matt. Before we do go, I want to put up the banner. So the banner for the Azure Back to School website is actually that, azureback2school.com, and it's run by a guy called Dwayne Natwick, who is on Twitter under Dwayne N Cloud. So Big shout out to Dwayne, who runs this every year. Thanks for allowing me and Matt to take part in this. Yeah. Did you enjoy that, Matt?
Yeah. It's okay.
Good
to see parts of Azure that I don't really get to use on a day-to-day
basis. I
basis.
mean, a lot of people don't know about those workbooks, and I did say to the PMs, you need to surface this more. Maybe put some of that into the actual cost optimization part. I think there's a lot of things like public IPs that are left around. You could save money, and yeah, it's kind of weird that some of it's in a workbook, but some of it's not. But they're working on that. So I gave them some decent feedback, and they were going to take it on board. Right.
Very nice.
Cool. Well, I just want to say thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.